Okay. Hello everybody. This is our systems theory video response for this week. Yeah, I think that the therapist, Mr. Stewart, um, was very like he was very matter of fact with the clients. He was, he was able to do like with like a brief context of their background, like really able to kind of um, frame a lot of the problems that they were facing in their marriage as like potential opportunities for growth. And I think that reframing helped them a lot. So I think he had a very non-anxious presence, was very calm throughout, and really kind of like moved them forward pretty well.
Yeah, the positivity that he continued to reiterate, um, and the hope, trying to instill that hope, uh, I think was one of his main goals with his stance and how he wanted the couple to feel and not to feel like any of their problems were insurmountable. I think in the talk back when you mentioned he mentioned basically maximizing the the good things and sort of not not dwelling on like sort of the negatives, or at least not seeing them as like, oh, like this is a huge issue, which may have its own, too much positivity was also talked about in the talk back briefly, and how that has its own drawbacks, but it seemed to serve this couple as far as um yeah, that hope, instilling that hope.
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah, I think he really tried to um instill agency in them as well. Like I remember there was one moment where they were talking about, like, he asked them point blank, like, if your marriage were to be beautiful, like what would you do? And they were, talking about like wanting to move
Hmm.
and like looking forward to retirement and things like that. And he brought in that brief anecdote about the two friends that he saw, and he was saying like, my wife and I feel like we're on our second date every time. And he's like that's something that is available to you. Like that's something that you can do. And I wrote down a quote that I really liked. He said, if you don't have a beautiful marriage, it's because you chose not to.
Yeah.
And so he's very like behaviorally focused in the sense like there there are behaviors or stances that you can take that can change things for you.
Yeah. It definitely there was a lot of defining the specifics of kind of what was going on, and also what would feel better, or for the future of the marriage, defining specific things, rather than going, I think, yeah, in the talk back he was saying like why he chose not to sort of focus on like, oh yes, it's abandonment, or like name these kind of broader concepts, and more just like, yeah, stick with them sort of in their life and their system, and yeah, specifically define those things, and try to treat those problems that they came in for. And that very much puts the therapist in their system and in their world. I also really appreciated the use of, um, when they both mentioned they were car heads,
Hmm.
like, I was like, oh, what kind of car do you drive? Kind
Yeah,
of,
yeah.
getting their respect, and their trust, and knowing that yeah, he can swim in those waters
Hmm.
and swim well. I think he used a lot of useful metaphors.
Yeah. Yeah, he was like he was very conversational while also able to step back and see the big picture as well. Like it felt like there was a good balance of like just talking like a friend would and showing
Hmm.
interest, as well as like, okay, so what's at the heart of the matter kind of thing.
Hmm.
Um, so I'm curious, the last question of uh anything that either the therapist or the clients didn't point out kind of that underlying message that you felt was being
Yeah.
communicated, but maybe wasn't.
Yeah, when I was jotting down notes, I there were a few things that were named in the discussion afterwards, but they weren't named in the session, so I will include those
Mhm.
here. Um, there's a lot of like kind of contradiction from like our counseling principles and practices readings of like let them discover, let them, and he was kind of just like dictating kind
Here's
of
what it
he
is.
was
Yeah.
directing, doing a lot of directing, and he did address that. But that stuck out to me, and I liked how he sort of navigated his approach. He's like, this works for me. He's more like an executive style of direction, but every therapist needs to find their own way. I think a woman asked a question, and he was, like, yes, don't try to model my thing. I just do it because I'm the most comfortable with it. I would like you to find your own mode of operation. And so I liked that. And
Hmm.
there's also a little bit of nervousness in the room. I mean,
Mm.
which is, obviously okay and natural. Um, and maybe some reluctance. I think the therapist asked like the man, it's like, can you do this? And he's like, I think so.
Hmm.
It wasn't
Yeah.
like, this sounds great, doc.
Yeah. 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 There's another moment where he was like, I don't really want to be here. Like, yeah. Um, yeah, no, I think those are all great points. And one thing that seemed to be a recurring theme is that neither of them, I mean, I guess it's kind of obvious you're in therapy, but like neither of them seemed terribly thrilled about their current situation, and they were very focused on the future. Like, oh, when we retire, I can not work this crappy job that takes me away from you, and we can move to the Carolinas and we can go to the ocean. And I think I don't, well, I think in some sense the therapist was really kind of took it upon himself to instill them with actionable steps that they can take in the present to make their relationship better. Um, but he would ask them like, "Oh, like what would have to happen for your relationship to change?" And I think she was like, "Oh, well, when I stop working." And the guy was like, "When we retire,"
Mm,
and I think there was kind of an opportunity missed to really dig into that and like hold them in that of like this dissatisfaction with their present and try and um work on that in a way. But
yeah.
yeah, like there was just this sense that there were all of these external things in both of their lives right now that is kind of getting in the way of
Yeah.
their happiness.
And the contradiction of that reality, just in the sense of they were asking her about pension and just like, they want to be free, but like the reality of life is like, I think she should stay on for 6 more months to get her
Yeah.
pension, which, that's a very logical thing, but yeah, the
Yeah.
future versus focusing on the now.
Yeah. Yeah. And I do feel like this approach helped ground them in the present because it didn't dwell on the past and he was really able to like bring them back to okay, like given all of these things that are happening, how can we still find greater connection with each other?
Hmm.
Yeah, is there any last things you
No, I
want
think
to say?
I think that covers it for me.
Cool.